Good morning, Sri Lanka. Welcome to the show on another great Thursday morning. Now, on today's show, we have a very special guest with us, and he's not really a guest. He's one of our own. We have with us Shafraz Salim. Now, you know him as the host of Beyond Business, which was a show that was running on MTV Sports not too long ago, and he's also involved in brand management at Unilever, and besides being a CIMA lecturer as well. And Shafraz, you're here with us on the show today to speak about how people can stop living from paycheck to paycheck, which basically means that by the middle of the month, your paycheck is over, and now you're trying to scrounge up money to go on living for the rest of the week or two. But it is something that's very important. We've touched on managing finances in many other episodes as well, but I think you can't speak enough about it. There are so many different things that you can speak about when it comes to managing finances. But before we go into that, I don't think we've ever spoken about how you personally manage your finances. So I'm sure since you are a familiar face, everyone would like to know how you go about it.
I mean, keep yourself busy, because once you keep yourself busy, you hang out less out, so that saves some money. Have one life partner, I think cuts down expenses, and then that's
I'm sure it does, because so many people go for multiple life partners,
then
right?
it increases the expense, so that's one way I think I cut down expenses, I would say.
Okay. And since now we've been speaking about so many different aspects on earlier shows as well, but household budgeting is something everyone has to do at the end of the day. And how do you start making a budget for your household?
Okay, see, how I look at it is, because you can't start off with how much you need. I always start off with how much I have. So you start off with how much you have in your buck, because bigger the amount of your money, the bigger your expenses could be. So once you know how much you have in your hand, then you rationalize on what are your most important expenses. Once you rationalize those expenses, then you start telling yourself, this is what I need to do on day 1, this is what I need to do on day 10. It's more like a schedule, it's more like a timetable. Then you know this is how much I need to spend. So all your lavish expenses, things you just do to go over the top, that could be cut down, because that's what really brings people down in terms of their day-to-day life.
And you can especially see that as soon as you get the paycheck, people go out and they spend a lot of money, and the week following the paycheck, I find, is always the hardest week to sort of control yourself.
I'll tell you something. I don't define rich and poor based on how much you earn. I define rich and poor based on how much you have at the end of the month. You know why? The rich always buy assets that are assets.
Okay.
Poor always buy assets or liabilities that they think are assets. Because what happens, basically, let's say you get money. You go and get a car loan, and then you think, oh my God, I'm rich. But what you don't realize, you need to ask yourself a question. An asset is something, even if you lose your job, it gives you money. Liability that you think is an asset is something, when you lose your job, you are in a burden. Imagine someone loses their job tomorrow. The car becomes a burden on you. The housing loan becomes a burden on you. So going out there and spending lavishly on unnecessary things or lifestyle things, thinking the asset, because you're like, oh my God, that's my car. That's not your car. Wake up, because that's someone else's car, and that becomes your burden when you lose your job. So that's a golden rule that people need to get out. Second thing, whenever you buy something, I always have a motto. I ask myself, VFM. That's something I always ask myself when I do anything in my life, even when I buy something. VFM is what's in it for me. So when you buy something, it's not to please someone else, it's about asking what's in it for me. If you ask that question over and over again, you'll only buy things that are important for you.
Of course, but there are some instances when you look at something and you think, what's in it for me? And it's clothing or something like that when you're going shopping.
Meditation is the word.
Shoes.
You tell yourself.
No, I can look at shoes and meditate for a long time. But at the end of the day, it's about the instant gratification. When you hold that pair and you know it's yours.
Okay, so the only question you ask yourself when you hold that pair is, do I buy this pair or do I eat my meals tomorrow? So if you ask that question, probably a pair of shoes would look kind of insignificant, I think.
Probably will, but I think that's when it comes to defining wants and needs. How can you figure out whether this is really something you want or this is really something you need?
Okay, need is something that sustains your lifestyle, that sustains your day-to-day lifestyle. So for you to live or qualify as a human being, you need it. Water, your basic attire, your basic food, that's needed. Want, that's your need, which is an essential. Want is something that enhances your lifestyle. So that takes you from a level where it's a requirement to a luxury. I'm not trying to say luxury is bad. All I'm trying to say is luxury is good when all your essentials are done and you have a leftover. But getting a luxury done via loan or instead of a need is not something needed. I would rather buy a slipper and first walk, then buy a pair of branded shoes. I would rather have a slice of bread prior to going for a buffet. So it's about starting from the lower bottom of the pyramid, then climbing up the ladder.
But you mentioned something like car loans. Now, a car is something that could be considered as an asset, right? And it's something that you need, a mode of transportation. So, then in that case, isn't a car loan something that just facilitates it and something that you ultimately do need as well?
Okay, good. Why do you need a car? To travel. Yeah, public transport, you can travel. But the problem is inconvenience. So when do you, so the question being, do you want to be hungry, do you want to be thirsty, or do you want to face inconvenience? First you would satisfy your hunger, thirst, and then you want to become convenient in life. The point I'm trying to make is, you have a job that gives you 50,000 to 100,000 bucks a month. If you can afford a car within that, by all means go and do it. But hello, we are living in a 21st century where cars are very expensive. Then what do? You go out there and borrow someone loan from a bank or your neighbor and say, okay fine, can I have some money? I need to get a car. So you use his money to buy a car. Then you're settling it every month back to him. My question is, you lose your job, or tomorrow let's say something bad happens, something that's a must, some sort of an accident. Then what do? You need to send that money over there. Then you have someone screaming at your door and asking for that money. That causes a lot of frustration, depression. Then you go to a doctor again, then or you go to a psychologist again, then you spend again, right? So the point being very simple. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is, a car is good, gives you convenience only if you can afford it. But people get loan very wrong. They say it's my car. It's not your car. You can't afford it. And if you can't afford something today, you can't afford something tomorrow as well.
But right now we have to go for a small slideshow, and let's go check it out, and I'll ask you about your opinion on that right after we come back. So those are a few insights for you here on Good Morning Sri Lanka, but I'm sure most of them are looking at the screen going, oh, it's easy for you to say, do this, do that. But I think we need to go in depth into all of these insights, and I want to get your opinion on some of these things. Now, tracking your monthly spending, I definitely know I don't save each and every receipt that I receive throughout the month and where my paycheck goes. But is that a practical way of approaching it, tracking every single rupee that you spend?
Okay, see, tracking every single rupee is not practical. It's not realistic as well. So what do you need to do? You have your big spends and you have your small spends. Small spends might be, getting a Panadol or whatever, that's very insignificant. But your monthly spends, it over time becomes more like a habit. Every month you have a particular amount of charge that you spend on basic things. That becomes a habit. You need to have a track. And one of the ways that people could have a track is take out cash from your ATM and spend. That gives you more of a track than swiping that, debit card. Sometimes what happens when you swipe, you don't realize how much you spent. And most of us don't even check statements. And today we need to go green, so we don't even take papers today, paper printouts. So hence what I'm basically trying to say is, do not have to write down, but you can at least have something in your mind saying, these are my expenses. Is it increasing every month? Is it decreasing? So it's having a knowledge of whether it's constant or whether it's going up, rather than jotting down everything, because I don't think that is practical. But have a sense of it.
Because, I mean, if it doesn't become a habit, I'm sure many people would do it, okay, let's say for a week.
Exactly.
Or two, and then they would just give up doing it.
Doesn't make sense. You won't do it with your busy schedules. You're not going to write down everything. It's about having a mental track. And I'm sure we remember mobile numbers mentally. We remember mail addresses mentally. So remembering how much you spend on certain big bucks or big buckets on a monthly basis, I don't think is a big deal.
Of course. But now using all what the spending habits that you tracked down, how do you translate that into a realistic household budget for each month?
Okay, so as I said, I mean, before you spend, budgeting has to happen, because budgeting is always done first. So if someone spends and then does a budget, then you are crying over spilt milk. So as I said prior, first of all, before you even look at your expenses, you need to know how much your income is. As I said before, I'm just reiterating it. Get your income and then know what your basic things are. And I'm sure sometimes you can't fit all your basics also into your income, because Sri Lanka is a country where so many percentage of the population lives below the poverty line of $1 families. So when you have certain expenses, you prioritize them. And then what I'm trying to say is the most important ones you spend. The others, you use that as a motivation for you, saying, look, I can't borrow. I need to satisfy this. I need to get a luxury. Let me earn more. When you try earning more, or when you're motivated to earn more, that's where saving, investing, all of those habits come into picture. So to inculcate that, have this as a motivation, have this as a KPI for you to go forward, rather than saying, okay, fine, so what, my money is over, let me borrow. No way, it doesn't work.
That's not going to happen. Of course. But budgeting for saving, what's your idea on that? Now, we're going to touch on this more right after the first break as well, but I just want to hear your opinion on whether it's possible or not to budget to save.
Budget to save, okay. Now, when you save, you need to know an objective or a purpose. Some of us save for a particular cause, let's say a major, disaster or major celebration, whichever you want to take it, happens, which is a marriage. Some people consider it a disaster, some people consider it a celebration. So you want to save for that, you know how much you're going to spend. So that is a purpose. You want to save for, let's say, your education, tertiary, you save for that. Or if it's a general practice, maybe you can, as I said before, consider all your expenses. There's a balance remaining, you put it into your savings. So it depends on the way you want to approach it. That's what I feel.
But we'll touch more on that later as well. But let's talk about paying monthly bills on time and avoiding those late charges, which again are an added expense. Now, how can that really have an impact on the budget and paying your bills on time? Or is it okay to go on credit for, a month or a week or two and to settle that a bit later?
See, it depends on what sort of a payment you're making.
Okay.
If it's a payment, for example, let's say a credit card, and I'm going to pay late, and they say I'm going to charge you late payment, I'd rather pay it off now rather than wasting that money. So, and I also said, if you have a rationale of how you're going to spend your income, obviously you would have an idea that this particular payment is due. Having said that, if there is a payment where the guy says, okay, fine, you pay me on this day, but then even if you don't pay me, I'm not going to charge you anything extra, then I rather postpone that. Because if you postpone that, that is basically you having that sum of money as liquidity. Someone else's money might not be the best way to do, but we all live in a life where you need to maximize for yourself. So if you're not going to pay anything extra, I don't mind you paying your bills late. But if someone is going to say, I'm going to charge you extra, I would pay it then and there. And the facilitation for you paying it then and there is pre-planning it before, so you know this is going to be due.
So again, it comes back to the principle of what's in it for me.
Yes.
Of course. All right. So we have more coming up with Shafraz Salim right after this very short break. So do stay with us here on Good Morning Sri Lanka.